Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Just do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening. Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiologist, I'm a nutrition professor, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder. I'm going to run solo a little bit at the beginning here. Then we're going to catch up with Phil toward the end of the news segment. And then we're going to have a discussion with Phil about essentially fatherhood. He had a discussion with Jim Wendler, and we'll have a clip from Jim and that sort of thing, and essentially just get a little deep on you, delving into some of these topics of how self-actualization and manhood and that sort of thing just relates to giving back and whatnot. So, but all right. So I am running on just a couple hours sleep. Had a wee hours arrival back from Ireland, and so what I want to do is actually share a little bit about some of the key dietary components that culture has, because weightlifters really lean in this direction in a lot of ways. Beef, potatoes, even relaxing with a stout beer. You know, what are these things like, these typical dietary patterns? Let me also just digress for a minute. I was there presenting some coffee data with students on serum epinephrine, right, adrenaline, and how it gets elevated from a combination of coffee and brief ballistic lifts. I don't want to go into gory detail about this, but essentially most research on coffee and caffeine deals with fatigue fighting effects, and you know, that's cool, or endurance exercise, but that's not what I do, and that's not what many of you do. I mean, we might like to have an aerobic base, but in any case, the interesting finding was that there was a statistical trend, a strong trend, but it wasn't statistically significant, so take it as what you will. We're talking about p-values of like between 0.06 and 0.09 for you stats people, but it was a small sample size, and that was part of the problem. But anyway, the point is, there was a 400%, I mean, if you want to put it in percent, increase in the group who got 2 packets of Via Instant Coffee before their brief lifts. And literally, we're just doing a couple of sets, maybe 9 total repetitions of some 50% loads, but maximal dynamic efforts, right? So explosive, lighter loads, just a handful of reps with benching, squatting. And after consuming decaf, it really wasn't enough stimulus by itself in the control group, or the decaf group, to raise their serum adrenaline levels. And as you might know, adrenaline is related to muscle power output and several things, several of the adaptations that we see with strength training and exercise. But yeah, and like, 430 to 450% increases depending on which time point we took the sample. So we give them some coffee after we took a blood draw. And then 60 minutes after they finished the coffee, we did another blood draw, so just to get the coffee effect, and then we did a blood draw at the very end after their brief ballistic lifts. And definitely something interesting, or at least trends towards something interesting going on. It just reinforced to me really sort of a mechanism, right, between the alertness. We had another poster that was exploring the effects of alertness and focus and whether you get habituated to it. And at least from our data, which was a larger number of subjects, 35 maybe, I'd have to go back and look, but there was no blunting of some of the alertness and focus, and that's contrary to some of what prior research has suggested. But again, this was specifically as part of a pre-workout arrangement, right? Have your Java and then hit the gym for a handful of brief, non-fatiguing lifts. So I haven't really seen much of that in the literature, so I thought you guys might be interested in that. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit more in the future. Okay, but back to the food science, and again, this is news, not because of this mini random literature review that I did just now, but because I just got back from that culture. Western Ireland's an amazing place. Those of you who live there know that. I just love the authenticity and the practicality of those folks. But so on to the quote-unquote news.
Strength and muscle sport news.
First, we're going to take a look at beef. Just a little bit. I'm just going to share a study or two of each one of these things. And again, Phil will eventually chime in here. But this first one is from Lenigan and colleagues from Dublin, University College of Dublin. They're from the Nutrigenomics Research Group and the Physiotherapy and Sports Science Research Group. British Journal of Nutrition 2017. So fairly new, of course. Processed red meat consumption, processed red meat contribution to diet patterns and the associated cardiometabolic outcomes. So they start off by saying there's evidence to suggest that processed red meat intake is a risk factor for heart disease and diabetes. So they investigated the association of red meats and different kinds of meats, actually, and they put them in dietary patterns. So Dr. Nelson and I have been talking about this in past months, that it's really a good idea to start instead of looking at individual nutrients or food items, look at the patterns and try to look at the patterns by which people eat. Like a lot of our listenership, we're going to have sort of that weightlifter, bodybuilder diet pattern, and you can define that in different ways. So what they did is they looked at some survey data from 786 Irish adults. Again, this is about beef in Ireland. All meat-containing foods that were consumed were assigned to 4 groups of about 500 people on the basis of whether they contained red or white meat and whether it was processed or unprocessed. Now, this caught my eye because every time I go to conferences, I ask people that are presenting posters or at a podium, they start ripping on red meat, and I say, how did you define red meat? Do you mean hot dogs and bologna? Because that's not the same thing at all as sort of, round steak, for example. So they actually took that step and looked at the differentiation. It says nutrient intakes, plasma fatty acids, and other biomarkers of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes were assessed. Here's the results. The diet pattern with greater processed red meat intake did present a poorer healthy eating index. So in other words, when they're eating lots of processed red meat, overall they had less variety in the different nutrients that they're taking in, that sort of thing. The processed red meat eaters also had a greater proportion of smokers, 29% of them. They also had lower EPA and DHA, so the omega-3s, of course, typically associated with fish oil. So now it did say there were no differences in classic biomarkers of heart disease and diabetes, including serum cholesterol, insulin, and a couple of other markers. This suggests that the consideration that red meat consumption is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes may need to be reassessed. In fact, even the processed red meat intake didn't affect some of the biomarkers specific to these diseases. So interesting stuff. To me, this reinforces that you have to be careful in defining what you mean when you say red meat, and also just throwing it under the bus, right? We have to control for things like smoking. They don't mention physical activity in here, but sedentary behaviors, which most of our listeners are not, those are big deals. And again, it's good to look at these different dietary patterns. And this really doesn't make me too worried about anything regarding unprocessed red meats, which are mostly the kinds that we would be consuming. So cool stuff straight from University College Dublin about red meat. So what's next here? Stout Beer, Guinness. Guinness is so much a part of the Irish identity. All over Dublin, you'll hear people kind of snickering. There's old quotes from the 1920 marketing campaign about Guinness is healthy, Guinness is good for you, things like that. So I wanted to take a look. I remember reading before that dark beers had more antioxidants and whatnot, and although that might not be part of a training diet, enjoying a good stout while you relax, it could actually have some advantages over some of the cheap, crappy American beers. Like, I'm a stout guy, I like Guinness myself, so I looked into it, and here's a few things if you like the dark beers. Guinness actually a 12-ounce serving of Guinness, and that's fairly small. That's not the way I was drinking it, but generally about 125 calories. That's only 15 more than Bud Light. Now, you've already sold me, right? I was sold on the taste factor, or the taste difference. And if you guys anybody's a Bud Light drinker or a Miller 64 or something, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you. Anyway, alcohol is Guinness's main calorie source. It's 4.2%. Alcohol, the dark color and sweetness, according to Time magazine, right? And again, not peer reviewed, but they're just generalities here. Comes from small amounts of roasted barley in the brewing process. So as we toured the Guinness factory, it was sort of Willy Wonka, right? Chocolate factory tour, except for adults. It was cool, and they were talking about how that roasted barley. Guinness is actually not a black beer. Many of you know it's a very dark red beer. And then the hops is what makes that head on the beer so thick, and that nitrogenated kind of action and all that, making Guinness so smooth. And anyway, so Guinness is not super high in calories. I was almost hoping it was, so we could use it as a additional calorie source for lifting purposes, weight gain. But a couple of the things here about this. These are not brand new studies. This is from Monteiro and colleagues, Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry, 2006. Again, sort of a random mini review. The aim of their work was to study the effect of the flavonoids from hops, like that you might get in the beer. Like, again, it helps make up the head of the beer. In Guinness, the title of the paper is The Effect of Hop Flavonoids on Aromatase, that is estrogen synthase activity. So a lot of times in weightlifting, we talk about estrogen as something that obviously is turning testosterone, aromatase, that is, turns testosterone into estradiol. And we don't want a lot of that as men running around in our bodies, right? You don't want breast development and some of that sort of thing. So the interesting thing here was they looked at different kinds of beer containing the various flavonoids and how they affected aromatase, again, estrogen production. It says lager beer, alcohol-free beer, stout beer, all significantly decreased aromatase activity. So very interesting there. And again, including the alcohol-free beer. Now, this is interesting because I read some papers that alcohol can increase aromatase activity. So this looks like some of the flavonoids that you might get in your stout beer would maybe counter that, or have anti-estrogen type effects. Mild, but still. So it says the relevance for the prevention and treatment of estrogen-dependent disorders such as breast cancer is something that's of interest. So interesting stuff from Monteiro and colleagues about how some of those flavonoids in stout beer, and again, to be fair, lagers as well, might be mildly anti-estrogenic. So, okay, cool. Another one, also related to stout beer, Biochem Molecular Biology Education 2008 from Logan and colleagues. This paper just says plant-derived phenolic compounds, such as those found in red wine, tea, certain juices, and yes, stout beer, protect against cardiovascular disease by detoxifying or scavenging superoxide and other unstable reactive oxygen species. And it goes on to say the ones that are very rich in phenolic compounds, red wine, green tea, blueberry juice, and stout beer all exhibit appreciable superoxide scavenging. So interesting stuff. Maybe you're getting some mild anti-estrogen effects. Maybe you're at least anti-aromatase. And here you're getting some antioxidant effects that might help with things like muscle recovery, because oxidation is one of the stressors that happens during exercise, and even when you're really sore, rocked with soreness and whatnot. So maybe that old quote from the 1920s that Guinness is healthy, there's more to it than we might think. So very cool stuff. One more on Guinness, and indulge me, right? I this is what I order when I'm here in the States, so having it with almost every meal when I was over in Ireland, perfect for me. This is from Alcohol Clinical Experimentation Research 2005. Effects of light and dark beer on hepatic cytochrome P450 expression in male rats. So what they're doing with this is they're looking to see what happens with light versus dark beer on these enzymes. The P450 enzymes, they break down various hormones and drugs in the body. I think there's over 160 different actual enzymes in this P450 category. Interestingly, though, it says the mean expression of CYP1A2, CYP1A2, and some of you know we've talked about this in past months, but that's one of the enzymes that makes you a fast or slow caffeine metabolizer, or at least plays a role in it, and it can be induced up and down. But so it breaks down caffeine in the body. So it says the expression of CYP1A2 was greater in the liver microsomes from stout-infused rats. So they actually infused the rats with light and dark beer. So this enzyme that could break down caffeine and other substances in the body was greater in stout-infused rats than in lager-infused rats, and also greater than in ethanol, right? So straight alcohol-infused rats, as well as from the dietary controls. It says there was no effect on testosterone hydroxylase activity, so that's another enzyme that could play a role, well, in this case, obviously, in testosterone breakdown. So conclusion, stout contains components other than the alcohol, other than ethanol, that interact in a complex fashion with the monooxygenase system. My takeaway from this is essentially that you might actually have a little bit more of this CYP1A2, almost as if you were drinking lots of coffee, right? These are inducible enzyme systems. They kick up when you're exposing yourself to some of these compounds. So dark beer could, in theory, speed up the breakdown of caffeine or other substances a little bit. So anyways, just some interesting effects, right? Those, I always say that, for example, coffee isn't just liquid caffeine. Well, Guinness sure as hell isn't just liquid ethanol, right? Isn't just ethanol. One more category here, potatoes. This is from King and Slavin, Advances in Nutrition 2013. It says the white potato is a concentrated source of carbohydrate, dietary fiber, and resistant starch, and continues to be a staple food for many cultures. The white potato is also a concentrated source of vitamin C and potassium. And I think a lot of us forget that. Potatoes are such a staple food for bodybuilders. Yams, red skin potatoes, brown skin potatoes. There's some differences in glycemic index and whatnot, but often a staple. And if you think about it, many of the things that the anti-carb, the really low carb groups focus on would be gluten and grains, and well, this is a carb source without grains, right? And it's got fiber, it's got more potassium than a banana, for goodness sake. So it says popular potato foods often contain more fat calories than carb calories. And if you think about the way that they're consumed outside of bodybuilding circles, that's usually true. Hash browns, French fries, right? It's actually more high fat. And that's why potatoes often get a bad rep. In some ways, like the red meat thing, right? So it says, however, potatoes should be included in the vegetable group because, again, those critical nutrients that they supply, vitamin C, potassium, fiber, things of that nature. So here we have King and Slavin back in 2013 saying, depends on how you eat them, right? How you prepare the potatoes. And the last one here, Molecular Nutrition Food Research 2014 by Kubow and colleagues. Extract of Irish potatoes decreases body weight gain and adiposity and improves glucose control in a mouse model of diet-induced obesity. So let's take a look at this. Both sexes of mice were fed a high-fat diet for 10 weeks with or without these polyphenol-rich potato extracts. Interestingly, the extracts attenuated weight gain in male and female mice by as much as 63%, which was associated mostly with a reduction in fatness, in adiposity. The mice that received these polyphenol-rich potato extracts also showed enhanced capacity for blood glucose clearance, so a little bit better carbohydrate tolerance. So they go on to note that these particular polyphenols from potatoes may serve as a part of a preventive dietary strategy against the development of obesity and type 2 diabetes. So again, some antioxidant type activity here from the potatoes as well. So cool stuff there on beef, Guinness, potatoes, some of the things that I've really been consuming quite a bit lately and really enjoying doing so. But we'll go over to Phil here, and we'll see. I know he's got a little bit of news before we go to break. Didn't you see something recently about red meat allergy? That doesn't sound fun.
No, I mean, me and my wife were joking. I was like, "Oh, just end me." But there's something new that these ticks are carrying called the Lone Star tick. And then it has a scientific name of the tick. But anyways, so basically kind of like Lyme disease. They carry it. They don't have a cure for it. They don't even know how to cure it yet. But the ailment is called galactose-alpha or alpha-gal. It's transmitted by the Lone Star ticks, widely distributed in the southeastern and eastern United States. And anyways, basically, if they bite you, they can pass this on from animals. The only people that don't have this protein in them, the only animals, I guess, are apes and humans. Don't have it in them naturally. But
so we're not eating those, obviously. So
yeah, so basically,
screwed.
if they bite you, if these ticks bite you, you become allergic to red meat, to mammalian meat, like beef, pork, lamb.
Oh my God!
Which is a heartbreaker for carnivores, of course. So
no doubt.
And right now, I guess it's some protein that these ticks are bringing in, and they're accidentally passing it on to you when they bite you, and then all of a sudden you're sick to it. And the weird thing about it is it can occur within 3, 10, or 12 hours. So the patients don't really know why they're having these allergic reactions or what they're having it to. So it's not like instant. Like if you're allergic to poison ivy, it happens. This, you have meat, and then let's say you have another meal 8 hours later, and then 2 hours after that, you get an allergic reaction from the first meal. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So does it go away? I mean, allergies are usually pretty permanent, aren't they?
No, from the sounds of it, it's permanent, and they don't know how to cure it yet. So,
oh my God.
Basically, yeah, from this point on, whatever it is they pass on to you just kind of inhabits itself in you.
They sound Texan. This isn't just Texas, so you said it's a southern
No,
US?
it's in southeastern and eastern United States is where all these ticks are. So hopefully I'm lucky and safe so far.
Yeah, I'm dangerously close to the east. That's not good.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right.
But it's a specific tick, so
oh my God.
Look out for those.
All right, well, worth following up, people. There it is. So, yeah, I'm always walking my dog, and I'm always steering her away from, like, the overhanging shrubbery and plants that, by the path, or the sidewalk, because the ticks are waiting. I'm like, the ticks are waiting for you right there. Don't brush through those. So, another reason to avoid it. My God.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone, we're going to go to the break. When we come back, we're going to have that discussion on fatherhood that Phil was just having an interesting chat with Jim Wendler, and we'll get to that in just a bit. Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You can simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that. And I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book. But that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. IronRadio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
Okay, everybody, we're back. So basically what happened is me and Jim Wendler sat down and had a talk a couple of days ago, just about fatherhood. Like every once in a while, we just chat about stuff. And we decided we were going to do one on fatherhood, and I recorded some of it, and we had some technical difficulties on there, so we'll share a piece of it the other day. But we're going to just go into some of the things that we talked about, and one of the big things, like we started off with, was just being involved in your kids' lives. That's a big thing that he's into, a big thing that I'm into. Like, we homeschool our kids. They're half-time homeschooling his kids. He's like, I suck at math and science. I'm not taking that over. So basically he sends his kid to school half day, and then they cover the math or the English and things like that he's good at. Him and his wife are good at. Mm-hmm. But even besides that, we got into it. It's like, even if your kid isn't, we have the pleasure and I wouldn't even call it we're not blessed to be able to homeschool our kids. It's a choice we make that we both do in our lives. Mm-hmm. We put other things aside. But, even if you can't, it's just being involved. And that's what, we were both talking about, how your kid comes home with bad grades now, and the teachers or the parents automatically go to the teachers and yell at them. It's like, well, what are you doing at home? The teachers can only get so much done. The rest of the time they're with you, it's like, you can help them learn things.
Yeah, it's a shirking of responsibility,
Yeah,
in a lot
and
of
it's like the minute you decide to have kids, your life isn't about you anymore. You have somebody else it's in your hands, and it's your job to raise someone that's not just a complete piece of trash.
And Phil, what strikes me about lifters is a lot of what we do with our training is about our goals, our competitions. A lot of people critique bodybuilders for being self-absorbed, and that's got to be a huge change of gears, because now you're living for somebody else. Yeah.
Jim talks about that in the excerpt we'll play, about how his life changed the minute he was becoming a father. But there's a big part we went into. It's just how it's on you. It's not on anybody else. You don't leave the government up to raise your kids. It's on you to raise them the way you want to. We can't trust the government to do much anything correctly. So why would we expect them to put it solely in their hands to educate our children when we have all this time to ourselves? The other thing we went into was like TV and all these TV and phones, and you see a lot of here you go, Junior, here's the iPad, mommy and daddy are going to go play now.
Oh, Christ.
That type of thing.
On the flight that I just came home, there were two little boys. They looked like, I don't know, one was 3 and one was 7, I don't know. The entire time, not granted, they're on a flight, right? But that's exactly how their parents manage them on this, 8-hour flight. Like, here's the iPad, and these kids were glued to the touch screen and the beeping and the flashing colors and stuff. Now, I'm not saying there couldn't be some advantages to that. I mean, they were educational games the kids were playing. But, again, to your point about it's almost just putting it off. Here, just play with this piece of plastic,
Well, and at some point, the problem is, and that's like, me and Jim were talking about, he said that he just noticed the more they have the TV on, the worse his kid will act. So they have purposeful time where all during the day in the summer, it's not on. We go do other things. And in the society we grew up in, that was the norm. There wasn't TV when we were kids. It was like, okay, there's cartoons from like 7 to 9. Yeah. And then it was just, you didn't want to watch TV.
Well, there was 3 channels. There was like 3 local channels and then like an off station. And so if you didn't like what was on, you turned it off.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you got a dose in the morning or whatever if you wanted to watch some cartoons, and then you had to learn how to entertain yourself in a way that was, not bothersome to society.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That's a good point, yep.
And kids kind of lose that now if they have if they're too reliant on that. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have iPhones and an iPad and things like that. And yeah, on like a trip or something, it can come in really handy. Mm-hmm. But as far as everyday life, it's like, let's get outside. Let's do something. Jim was talking about how with his kid, they have him trying something new every week. They signed him up for a new activity every week. He did track and field the other day, so he learned how to throw a javelin as a 5-year-old. This week it was golf. He's like, I don't like golf, but I'm letting my kid try stuff, and it keeps him busy.
Yeah.
Yep. And things like that. And it's like, and another lost skill is just kids. We entertain the hell out of ourselves as kids. We learned how to do that. It was a skill that we had to do, or you were just insanely bored. I mean, I remember playing with Legos for hours on end, or going out and you would turn a stick into a gun. All of a sudden, this stick in my hand is now a, we didn't have super soakers and Nerf guns. They didn't exist. So, we made ourselves. We entertained ourselves in a way that was, it was developmental for ourselves and just, it's just healthy.
Well, more creative, like more driven by the individual and not just provided. Like, you might say, hey, Lonnie, that's not fair. The kids on the flight were playing with an iPad. You know what? The dad and the mom are right there. They could have colored with them or drawn something. Like, here, I challenge you to draw a cow for me. Draw a car.
Anything.
Anything like that. Because, of course, those big planes are very stable. It's not like we were all over the place. But again, to your point, right? Then they're left relying on their own creativity, and that's. I mean, look at the lifting. I started lifting when I was 13. Mm-hmm. When did you start lifting? Were you a teenager?
Yeah, I did some then. I got serious about it when I was about 18. But I mean, I did lifting.
But there's a creativity even in that, right? Like you discover new exercises and new ways to lift, and rep cadence and. All kinds of cool stuff, and you're not going to get that sitting watching other people on Facebook or YouTube do it.
No, and I mean that's one. I mean the big thing with us too was, and you don't see it anymore. I was talking to a friend of mine. Like, I don't know if there was a day that, like, when we were kids, there wasn't a pickup basketball game or football game or baseball game. You drive past parks now and schoolyards, and there's nothing there. There's no one there.
Nerf.
And that's all we did.
Nerf football. Like, that was I never played, well, when I was really little, I played some football, but I wasn't a real big person, but God, I must have played 1 million games of Nerf football in backyards.
Exactly. You got however many kids together, you split them up into teams and you went.
Yep.
And we would do that for hours.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Hey, we're playing tag. Whatever it was. And you walk around parks and schoolyards now, and they're like graveyards. There's nothing going on. And the weird thing, I'll see my daughter, she'll get on YouTube or whatnot, and the thing that perplexes me is she will literally watch videos of other people playing video games.
Oh, right. No, that's a big thing. That's a thing, like streaming. No, I've seen a bit of that myself.
And it's like, where did this come from? I mean, I remember as a kid that sure, we had some video games later on in life, but you didn't want to watch other people play. You wanted to play. You couldn't wait for your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, passive.
It wasn't hours on end of watching somebody else play it. You're just you're living through somebody else. Really. Literally. Your life experience is someone else's. You're watching them live it. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm like, okay, it's time to put that thing down, sweetheart. You're going outside.
Right. Yeah.
It's time to do it.
Hey, let me ask. So why is Jim on the fatherhood kick so much right now? Like, I know he approached you and said, "Hey, I'd like to talk about this." Right.
Well, I mean, it's just, I think it's kind of a big thing. And one thing he talks about a little bit is, we have one of his bumper stickers. It's like, if you want to do something great for the world, have children. If you don't want to have children, mentor them. If you don't want to do either of those things, just stay out of their lives. So basically, we talk about it a little bit about, there's one real way to give back, and that's raising a decent human or helping other ones, is what it is. Like, when it comes down to it, his books, his this and that, that's all great. But if nobody uses that information and nobody on the street, in real world, and passes it on, it's all for naught, So, I mean, that's kind of where he's at. It's like, I mean, the way he can really touch people and really change the world is educating other kids and shooting them in the right direction and making them be decent human beings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really the only thing that's a surefire way that you actually did something great for the world.
You and I have actually
changed somebody's life.
Right. I think we've discussed this before, but that's where teaching and coaching, they're almost indistinguishable. I mean, the main goal, right, is to have an impact on someone in a positive way, change the world, give back, that kind of thing. It's well, of course. And when I watch you coach, that's what you're doing. You're drawing stick figures, and you're talking about, you're sneaking in a little what I call accidental learning, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want a big squat, you better learn, what moment arm is, or a resistance arm and things like that. And it's the same thing with the classroom. I always talk about what I call my academic family tree. It's like it's almost like you're boasted like a proud papa. That one's a surgeon, or that one's an artist, or that one's a writer. And I got to think there's a lot of similarity. And science journals, of course, a lot of our listeners know, have impact factors, which is basically how many other journals point and reference your paper, and that journal. But those impact factors, even the really big ones, oftentimes they pale next to a podcast, right? Or like some social media. But the problem is there's no gatekeepers anymore. And Rob used to bitch about this, and me too. Without editors, I mean, this, Phil, for Christ's sake, you worked behind the scenes and did a lot of this. The thankless job of like editors and moderators is anybody can have a voice and they can be spewing nonsense, with a high impact. So it's almost like a responsibility. It's like the Spider-Man thing about with great power comes great responsibility. If you become a accomplished lifter, coach, teacher, you almost have a responsibility to have some impact, and beyond just 80 people reading a journal article, So
yeah, we go into that, and then of course, because both of us, what we do is coach. We talked a lot about him and the football team he's working with, me and the wrestling team, and basically you got 25 kids, and if you're lucky, let's say you have a team of 25, 5 of them really want to be there, and 5 of them really want to work hard. That's if you're lucky. But the neat thing that happens is if you touch those 5 and you give them driven, the other ones won't work as hard, but compared to what they were doing, it raises the bar for everybody. If they see Johnny and Jimmy and James all kicking butt, well, we better step it up a little bit too. And that you end up passing on to so many people, and I'm already seeing it now. I've only been working with these kids for 6 months, but what happens if you make this one do something amazing? The other kids see it. No, now I got 4 more. 4 more came in because they want to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
So your tree starts getting larger and larger of who you've helped, and it passes on. And like I do, I don't want anybody walking my facility. I'm not there just to make them strong. It's not just here you're doing what I'm telling you to. It's here you're doing what I'm telling you to, and this is why. I want them to know the why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. So eventually they can do the same thing. If what I do ends when I'm gone, I failed. I want somebody else to carry this on. I'm sure, like Louis. Louis getting up there in age. I'm sure he's passing as much as he can on too. He doesn't want, if Westside just goes away, something's lost. A big part of the world's gone.
Yeah, what's his legacy?
Yeah, what's the legacy if nobody ever takes those reins and really gets in and learns it? And that's kind of what I think most of us in coaching and teaching are in for. So
yeah, I think it's a natural progression. Once you're in your 40s, there's an old samurai text, and they literally talk about really don't listen to anyone too much until they're about 40. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a ballpark. Yeah. I know we have 20 and 30-year-old listeners who are like, I know stuff. Yes, you do. Yeah. But they're just saying from life lessons under the bar or whatever whatever the skill is, those are the guys you really start to listen to. And honestly, I think it's a natural progression to move toward coaching because, when you're 50, your joints aren't quite what they were. You might be roughly as strong, but you're gonna blow something possibly. And so what do you want to do? It's natural to move that on. I mean, people talk about, like, often in my department academically, there's a lot of talk about sports and sports teams. I don't really keep up with a lot of team sports unless I'm feeding one of those guys. Now I'm interested, right? So, and again, it's that sort of legacy thing, and so.
Well, that's, another big part of it is, as a coach, as a teacher, whatever you're doing to mentor these kids, you end up being a lot more than that. I don't know how many times, and Jim talked about it too, we're there to make them stronger. But here comes Johnny, and hey, Phil, this happened this weekend, me and my parents, this. You end up being a psychologist and a friend, and much more than just, hey, I'm here to make you stronger. They start to confide in you, and then that's part of your job, because it does impact. If Johnny had a hell of a night at home and got kicked out of the house, that's going to impact his strength training too. So we deal with that.
Yeah, that's something I call the apprenticeship model. It's something that I do a lot with. I use research projects to do it. Like, what's your question? Let's develop a question together and go through every step to answer that, right through publishing or presenting something. But we've lost that apprenticeship model. There's even a lot of discussion in higher ed about character development and is it the teacher's responsibility? But I think, to your point, it's almost unavoidable, right? That at some point there is going to be lessons learned, like hard work leads to rewards, things like that come into play. You're not just dispensing information. Somebody could read a book and I guess get a bit of that, but it's that apprenticeship mentorship model that sort of drives me, and that's got to be similar with what you guys do.
Oh yeah, and it's and also if you want a kid to totally, basically as a coach, what you want to happen is somebody just to totally buy into your system. You have to believe in what I'm having you do. If you don't believe in it, it's not going to work that great. The minute you buy into it and just believe in it and live it, it's going to work. And if you can help Johnny through a tough situation outside of that, there's a bigger chance that he's here to help me with everything. I'm going to do it. I'm going to believe this guy. I trust him.
Trust, yeah.
There's this trust factor that's built through other stuff besides strength training. I'll shoot the shit back and forth with some of my athletes. Social media for me is mainly, it's for business, but a lot of it's with that. I'll get on there. If one of them hadn't shown up for a couple of days, I'm dropping them a line. I'm ribbing them a little bit on social media.
Yeah.
Hey, where you been? This and that. That's partly me ribbing on them, but when you're dealing with 16 to 14 to 18-year-old boys, ribbing on each other is it's part of your relationship. It's showing that, hey, we're friends. We miss you. Get back in here.
Right. Yep.
You're missing your work. We're missing you around here. Let's go. Let's get back to hard work.
Yeah.
So
the community.
It's a friendly thing. It's not bad. So. We just talked a lot about that, and we're not saying society's horrible, but a lot has changed and a lot could be better, and we sound like old curmudgeons. Oh, back in my day it was so much better. No, in a lot of ways now it was. There aren't kids out running around playing. Recesses are being shut down, and that kicks back more on us as parents. Okay, I got to find these outlets for my kid. We're going to play sports. We're going to do whatever. And that's like Jim was talking about his first son. He said, I told him, I don't care if you do sports. You need to be in some kind of shape. He said, if you're an IT professional, whatever, just for health and longevity, it's going to help you to be in some kind of shape. Do some push-ups, do some calisthenics, whatever. And there's enough proof out there now, which you can throw out there, that that type of stuff helps your mental side of the game too.
Oh, absolutely.
This loss of recess, that was another big reason we pulled my daughter out of school, and my son probably just will never go to a regular school. They knocked it down to where those kids had one recess a day. As a 8-year-old, they had no outlet for all this energy, and they're wondering why all these kids are fidgeting at their desks and this and that. If you go take them to pee and wear them out for an hour, now bring them back, and they're going to settle down. They're going to listen. They're going to learn.
Right. Listen. If anything is biopsychosocial, sort of. It affects your biology, right? Your brain chemistry, your hormones are different. Like, you just exerted yourself. You're more receptive, right? Like you said, sit down, concentrate, figure this stuff out. But they always attack the extracurriculars when it comes to budget cuts. There goes music. There goes art. There goes gym. Yes. well, we just screwed up real bad right there.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. I mean, it's those things that a kid's only going to sit down unless he's one of those kids that is just blessed with math, and that's his thing. You're only going to get the average kid to sit down and really concentrate on math for a limited amount of time before they are fidgeting and things. Give them a break. Let them run around. Let them wear themselves out a bit. And now they're more receptive. Okay, we're back to this. I got to eat my meat. I just had my pudding. You know?
Right. Sounds like Pink Floyd.
They gave me a little pudding. Okay, I'll do some more meat. You know.
Yeah.
So, and that's largely lost. And we're in a society where people. We're in a society that allows us to be lazy, more lazy than ever. But that doesn't mean it's a good thing. You know, we have to search for extracurricular physical activity.
Right. Yep. I actually read, God, it was probably 2 years ago. There was a comment. It just made me think, and I don't even remember where I heard it, lay source or published, whatever. But they were essentially saying that collectively we're smarter because of our connection with the internet, and we can look up something, Google almost anything. I mean, imagine what that does in the classroom. You know.
Yeah.
But individually we're dumber, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to know certain things about art or music or biology or whatever, because you could simply grab your cell phone, right?
Yes.
So collectively smarter, but individually we're getting dumber.
Yes.
That's disturbing to me, right? Because when you're a Renaissance man or woman, you can draw on, like Steve Jobs used to say, it's connect the dots. Like, you're not always immediately aware how that art project or how a history lesson is going to affect your science, for example. But you can go back, you know, when you look back, you can connect the dots, like the way he learned calligraphy and how that affected the Mac. You know, there wasn't just Courier font, green blinking nonsense on your screen. You're dry, boring, you know what I mean? And so you can draw on a lot of these other concepts because you're not individually dumb. You're well-read enough, you're self-actualized enough that you can actually bring something to the table.
Well, even memory. I mean, the amount of memory that we have to use now. Basically, people don't have to remember anything because it's why do I need to remember that? I can just Google it again when I need it.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I still remember my childhood phone number. I remember my first boss's phone number. I have no need for it, but I can tell you it right now. There was things like that it's embedded in my memory bank because we had to. And you don't have to anymore. You just store the numbers on your phone. What's Charles's number? I don't know. People say, you know, let me look it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have to engage their brains that way anymore because they just stored this thing does it for them. Well, what happens if that thing breaks down and it's gone? You know, now the ability to read a map, you know, to know directions, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
It's all in your hand now, and you don't have to do it yourself. I mean, look back generations, we were worse than the generation before us as far as that goes. I mean, back in the 1700s, 1600s, they just knew the way. They didn't have a map. You know, they just memorized I passed that tree, I'd go past that rock, and then came maps. Now we have a map. We have something to look at, but we can read this, how to get there. You know, and so in certain ways we are collectively smarter than ever. But in other ways we just don't use our brains like we used to. You know, the memorization, the skills.
Yeah.
That we have to learn.
I think physicality, that's why weightlifting, actually Chris Shugar had a bunch of people write a little thing like, what did you learn from lifting? And I'm like, well, if anything, I think it's a metaphor for the challenges of life. You know, like if you want something to be satisfying in the end, you have to sacrifice to get there, you know. And I mean, what does weight do? It presents an immediate challenge. You can't read about that. You can't watch someone. Honestly, you can, right? Unfortunately, so many people online, they just, you know, the ones they hang out on forums and YouTube, and they're just critiquing everyone else. But it's to me, it's like that man in the arena quote from was it Teddy Roosevelt? You know, it's easy to cast aspersions at someone else about how they might have done better. Let's see you do it. You do it.
Yeah.
And it's a nice vehicle. That's what I always liked about martial arts, too. Lifting and martial arts, to me, I tend to be on the introverted side, which is weird that I'm a teacher, but there are things that you can engage in, and it's a repeated courage test. It's a discipline test. Mm-hmm. You know, do you have the discipline to put down the pie and just go eat some oatmeal? I mean, if it calls for it. You know, and you can't, physical development strength adaptations, whatever, cardiovascular adaptations. You have to actually go do it. You can't grab your phone and just get it instantly.
Yes.
So.
And it's also, I mean, as far as weightlifting goes, and even really any sport, but I mean, I'm going to deal with getting stronger because that's what I do. That's what I help people do. I mean, it's a lesson in you fail, and it's okay. And you get up and you try again. Because at no point in time, I don't care who you are, walks in my gym, I have a 2.5 pound plate that will beat you. It is better than you.
Right. Yeah.
You are never the top dog. That bar will always win. I've never met a person that couldn't walk in. Okay, your best squat's 1,023. Okay, here you go, buddy. 1,028. Let's do it. You just lost.
Yep.
So
gravity wins.
And it pushes you out of your comfort zones. If you actually want to get better, you're going to be living in discomfort. Be that, okay, I'm dropping weight for a meet, or if I want to get stronger, I need to eat more than I'm used to. I need to train harder than I used to. I've got aches and pains, this and that. I mean, there's lots of life's lessons to be learned. I mean, it's living outside of, much of life now is lived in the comfort zone. You're not uncomfortable almost at any point in time.
Right, and personal development is always just outside of that, right?
Yes.
That's a simple, that's the rule of stimulation. You have to be outside of a comfort zone if you're going to be actually changing and growing.
Yes. And there's that's constantly going on, in our facility,
I think that's what coaches, like you and Jim both do, I imagine, is put people, you can't put them so far outside the comfort zone that they catastrophically fail or get injured or whatever. But so that's why, again, with the mentor thing, you're like, let me put you just a little bit. I know this is, trust me, it's part of the plan.
Yes.
It's a little uncomfortable, but you do have a chance, and this will make you stronger.
And exactly. And we talked a lot about that, like with his football kids. He's like, we could tell when they had bad days. Hey, why are they going at this? Well, he said, so what we do, we change our plan. We'd give them something we knew they could win at. They'd have to push for it, but they would win. Mm-hmm. So you change your plan, and the best way to get people succeeding is let them succeed. Give them something they will win at, and they will want more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sure, you push them hard, but like you said, you back it off. Oh, it's a bad day, so okay, you're doing this instead. And if you try hard, you will win, and they do, because you give them something they're going to win at. And what do they start doing? Is they realize that work equals progress equals winning. And then they want more of that. Mm-hmm. So, and then they start to believe that they can win anything. That's what he talked about his team. He came in there and they were like the worst team in the league. And then they went to state, went to the playoffs. The team that they played in the first round of the playoffs beat them like 42-0 the year before. This year they lost 10-7.
Yeah.
He said that's a huge difference. We went in there and crushed them. And the other team was like, what the hell happened? Well, these kids know winning now. A lot of it, and it wasn't all just they were stronger. They had a belief in themselves, because all they did was win.
I think the only way to really build confidence, I've really given this a lot of thought, whether you're a surgeon, whether it's surgery or squatting, it has to be serial successes that lead you there. The only way to get confident is to do it and get a little bit of success, just a little bit at a time. You can't read about it. You can't listen to watch a YouTube video about it. If you want to be confident, comfortable in your own skin, competent at something, that confidence only comes by doing. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
Yes.
And that's what people don't do, like you guys seem to be saying. They might know the path, but they haven't really walked it, so they don't have true confidence, at least not like they could.
Yes, and I agree with the other quote. Which kind of goes against it, that you learn more from every failure than you do any success. But we don't want you failing all the time, because your confidence will go to shit.
Yes. Right.
So basically, we have very few failures, and we try and stack you with small successes that push you out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, coach, I don't know if I can do that. I know you can. Let's go. I got your back. I believe in you.
Yeah.
And then you start doing that. I have athletes that literally they shock me. If I tell them they can do it, they just know they can now. And they'll make it happen, even if it's something like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting.
Right.
But they pull it out of their ass just because, he wouldn't tell me I could do it if I couldn't.
Yeah.
And they've bought in that far. So they come to, and they're 100% confident. Okay, I can do it because coach says I can. And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So
I think it's one of the things you can learn through anything physical, and kind of like what you guys seem to be saying. I don't care if it's a sport or if you're hiking, whatever, you're growing and developing in a direction, but physicality, like physical adaptations, strength and muscle mass, things like that, they're very empowering, and with good mentorship, you're all but guaranteed to have some successes. You're like, wow, my arms are bigger, or I'm much stronger, and after time, that changes who you are. I mean, imagine like the awkward young man or woman, they start playing with the weights, or even a middle-aged, I know you work with some middle-aged women and stuff.
Yeah.
Incredibly empowering, because you're going to grow. You're going to grow in a certain direction because you're just doing something.
And it just makes sense to live in that model. I mean, like my son is learning, he can count to 10. He's not 3. If I were just to sit him down with like the quadratic equation right from the start and be like, okay, here you go, buddy, you're learning math today. He would fail. We start with something easy, and we get these little successes. Oh, good job, you counted to 3. We started with that. Exactly. You don't start with something that's just horribly hard for them.
Exactly.
And then they fail over and over again. You start low and let them win. Okay, let's go to 4. Awesome.
Right, and that's true.
Get them excited about learning.
Yep. I mean, that's why I like the project-based approach to like teaching undergrads and mid-level, like graduate students. Is there's all this accidental learning and confidence building that goes on, right? Because I help write part of the abstract, or I'll say, well, you didn't control for diet. What do you think that would do to the outcome? Is that going to do something to this lifting program? All the kinds of things that you kind of talk about and build on. But to your point, a lot of people might say, listen, undergrads don't do research. I'm like, well, really? Because I haven't seen, what I have seen is that there's no reason you can't take a 20-year-old and teach them the same thing we usually reserve for 23-year-olds as far as like research and stuff and writing, and they just need shown how to do it. They will step up but again, it's very, to your point, progressive. First, what do? We look at the world as a comparison, one versus another, like an intervention of lifting or eating of some kind compared to a control group. And that begs the question, what is that control group? And, you build as you go, and it's surprising how far people can advance when they do project-based kind of learning. It's the kind of thing I really like instead of teach to the test kind of thing. I almost pity like the chemistry prof. They're like, balance this equation. Well, why? Well, just because you have to. And I'm like, well, balance this equation because we're going to use and abuse this knowledge to get you ripped later. That's different. It's nutrition and physiology, exercise phys are great. I almost feel like I have an unfair advantage because we can always use the knowledge toward application, toward a goal. It might not be an immediate goal, but it's going to be something they can apply to themselves, and so
it makes more sense. It gives them something tangible besides just do this because I said so.
Right. And I mean, I know these are students, and this isn't the same thing as fatherhood, like you guys are talking about, because that's a more intimate kind of thing, as far as family closeness and
and I mean, we went all over the board. Jim, we were bouncing all over the board. It was definitely not PG rated, but everything from one of my biggest things I ride my kids a lot. I want them to be good people. And Olivia's getting up in that age where she's pushing back harder. But the minute I see her outside of our house, like if she's dealing with another authority figure or another parent, she is 100% respectful. And it's like, I won. I'm okay. We have our little deals. I had my deals with my parents. Right. You're going to. Mm-hmm. But I know outside of the house, she's a respectful human being. And I won. If we did that, we're in a good spot. Yeah. Because she's going to have her battles with us. I'm her parent. She's supposed to. So,
right. Yep.
But, there's differences. But there's kids out there that don't even know that. I mean, for God. I mean, I had a few kids come into my place. So they're there to learn something. We started this wrestling camp, and one little kid's like, well, I do it this way. Well, how about you shut up and do it my way because you're paying me to teach you?
Right. No doubt.
If you don't want to do what you're paying to come learn, go. If you know it all at 7, leave. We're here to go through a progression and teach you something. So it's just shut your mouth and let's do it. So,
and that happens right through young adulthood. I mean, I have a lot of students. The entitlement is almost unreal, and like a lack of respect. Like they want to audit how you graded the test and things like that. And that's quote unquote worse than it used to be, because the kids grow up with less respect. You know. Now, let's be honest. I mean, often I've heard the quote that only to be if I could only be 20 years old again and know everything. You know, because the more you learn, of course, the more you realize you don't know much. Yeah. And you got to be big enough, I think, as a teacher or a coach to realize that, and then kind of steer them back. To your point about know-it-alls in your gym, I mean, that happens in academia too. You know, I actually remind on my syllabi sometimes, like, be aware of the already know this mind. If you already know this, great. Sit there and shut up and pick out the gold nugget that might be new. You know, about the 10th time I had to draw out the Krebs cycle and cell metabolism, I'm like, already did this, but then, okay, no, sit down, shut up, you know, maybe there's something that this guy or gal is going to teach me that I didn't know before. You know, repetition is the mother of learning, you know, stuff like that. But to your point about paying for it, I heard a professor say last year, and it really rang true to me. She said something about that higher ed is one of the only fields where people will pay premium dollar and then do everything they can not to get their money's worth. Right? like not go to class or skimp out on the assignments or, right? Premium dollar and then do everything you can not to get your money's worth. And I imagine there's some similarities with coaching and fitness too, right? Yeah. They pay good money, and then they don't want to get down with your system. It's like that old Zen quote, you know, stop all your bargaining and just get with a program. You know, because it's the vehicle.
Yes, and that's the good thing about where I'm at, and even Jim with his football team. He's like, he said if he has a kid that just literally doesn't want to do his thing, he's like, fine, go ahead and do it your way. You probably know better than me then. And you know, he'll just let him. Yeah. And I'll do the same thing. Like, if you don't want, just leave. I don't need you.
Yep.
You know, you need me, and you'll realize that one day, and you'll probably come back. But because I got 40 other ones like you, so I don't have the time to wait for that. I want people that want to learn, and I'm not being disrespectful. I just don't have time for that.
I mean, it's classroom or in the gym. You have a certain responsibility to your community, right?
Yes.
So if a kid's sitting there laughing, watching YouTube in class, you know, I can invite him to leave. Say, you know, listen, you don't have to be here. Now, in theory, with tuition, you just handed me $30. Go waste your time. You go waste your money, but don't waste, you know, the young lady or young man next to you who want to get something out of this.
Yeah. You know. Or I'm not going to adjust my belief system in what I know works because you think you know something better. Well, what about this? Because I think, no, that's not it. We're doing it this way.
Right.
You know, because I know this works and yours doesn't. So shut up and do it, or don't. I don't care.
Yeah, that's funny that Jim would say, "Okay, you since you know this, go ahead and go do that. We'll see how that plays out for you."
We'll see how it plays out while the other 40 kids on the team get strong. You know,
I think that's what's funny about Jim. He's so matter of fact with like that kind of crack. You know, like, well, let's see what the outcome of that is then, tough guy.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. I mean, what are you gonna do? It'd be like, I don't know. It'd be like me going up, paying to go to a seminar with Ed Cohn and then arguing with him about this is the wrong way.
Right.
You know, that's just, it makes no sense. You know, you just shut up and listen and learn.
Yes.
You know? Right.
So all right, let's set up the quote. I know that despite the technical crap, what was it that actually survived out of your conversation with Jim?
Well, I think we just added on, but you know, basically it's going to talk about, you know, his big way of giving back, what he figured out. You know, like you said, we each have a way we can give back in this, being a mentor, this and that. And he figured out, you know, what he can do as coach, and he doesn't get paid for it. You know, he decided to just do this. You know, he went to the high school and he donates his service to, I'm going to help these kids, because he was he knows strength training. He was a Division I ball player at Arizona. And so I want to go in there. I have a passion for helping these kids succeed. Okay. So,
well, I'll tell you what. Let's set it up. We'll play it right now, and we'll come right back and finish out here.
Sweet.
You change the world is raising good kids.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
And so I'm trying. you can go to all your fucking march for the rallies and stuff like that, but it's all bullshit if you're raising shitty kids and not doing things on the ground level to help your community on whatever thing it is. And I don't want to sit around and fucking cook for the homeless. My mom did that.
Yeah.
Because she's a cook. She loves cooking. So that's why I started coaching. I'm like, well, this is something I can fucking do. I can give back. I don't get paid. It's not like I turn down $150,000 a year either. Yeah. Just so everyone's, I'm not that much of a fucking saint. But and that's when I realized that's how you can make a big difference. Is you don't have to raise fucking Albert Einstein, but don't raise fucking Charles Manson either. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think it's. I always laugh when I see people so heated up about certain fucking things, and then I'm like, it's like Jordan Peterson says, "Is your own bed fucking made?"
Yeah.
Did you take care of your own family and your business and your kids and stuff like that? So, I don't know. I just, as you can imagine, we strip away all the crap in our life pretty much so we can concentrate on what's important.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's honestly the big take-home message. Is you're gonna have kids, and it's not about you anymore.
No.
Even when I got married, I mean, it was like, okay, I'd spent 20 years traveling with everything I owned was in the back of my truck. It's like, okay, now it's game changer. I got to take care of everybody else. That's just my job now.
When I first had Mason, my oldest, it was like, just like you, everything was like, I remember, I'll never forget this. Dave and I left for a seminar, and I don't know where the fuck we went. But my now ex-wife, we were together, and on the way, I was on, getting on the plane, going to wherever, and Dave and I were just talking endlessly about what squat suit I should wear. Mm-hmm. Should I wear the canvas, or should I go back to the strong metal poly? On the way, when I was away, my ex-wife called me and told me she was pregnant. And so I remember getting off. We got off the plane at the same gate when I got back to Columbus. And I remember thinking, remember when my life was about squat suits? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I don't give a shit what I wear. Fuck that.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
And it was just like such a game changer because we went in and out of the same gate in the Columbus airport. And, there's the only thing I would tell people, especially young parents and stuff, is something that my wife and I did was we removed anything that was superfluous in our life so that we could raise kids and do some shit that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we don't take on a lot of bullshit activities or go to, involved with this or that. It's like even like when we were we went on vacation, we did one big thing a day.
Yeah.
Not three.
Yep.
And so the rest of the day we could relax and stuff and go about our business. But you see people like, well, listen, I got this and I got that. Well, no wonder why you're fucking stressed out.
Yeah.
And then, so that was...
I mean, as far as parenting goes, I think the big thing is what you just said is it doesn't mean losing everything you have. Get rid of the bullshit. But like my kids, they come to us to our shit too. It's like, hey, we went to your gymnastics. It's time for you to come to our this.
Yeah. Well, it's about being a family, not being. It's funny because some kids grow up thinking the world revolves around them, and their world it did. Yeah. I get it. Yeah, it did. Like when I played football, my parents would come to all my games and stuff. Even when I was at Arizona, my parents traveled to every single game. But you think that's all my parents did?
No.
Like my parents, like I said, they're in fucking Turkey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing shit. So I think there's a way to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Yes.
But you got to take away a lot of the icing, I guess is the best way to say it. And anyway, I'm just talking out of my ass right now.
Well, we'll call it there, man. It's been an hour.
Oh, okay.
So
I apologize.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So.
All right.
Anything else you got to say? Anything big coming up besides the Swiss?
The Swiss thing. Just football. We have camp starting Monday. I can't wait. It's always it's just awesome. First of all, it's awesome because I don't have to have a helmet and pads on right now. Because as much as I miss football, there's no way I can. here's the thing, Phil, is I see a lot of people taking a lot of credit. If you don't have a fucking helmet on and take a snap, you're not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You really aren't. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to have like everyone sees the glory on Friday or Saturday nights. Like, you don't see Tuesday at 5:30 when you're, it's 90% humidity and you're out there in the fucking grass with, I don't know. So, yeah, I'm just excited. I'm excited to see what the kids can do. Even if, I tell the kids, I don't care how many wins you have either. But you won't quit, and you will, physically. I always tell them, take their fucking manhood, embarrass them.
There you go.
So probably not the best message, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm good, brother. I don't want to keep you any longer.
You're good. I'm going to get back at it.
Thank you very much, Phil. Hey, I
Yep.
appreciate the friendship and I appreciate the business.
Yep.
And you and I really violate a little bit. I mean, we're not fucking best friends, but
Yep.
you never do business with your friends, but we were able to keep all that shit. And part of that is having Juliet in the business.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So she does a good job. So,
Yep.
but thank you for everything, Phil. You've done a great thing.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right, brother. I'll see you.
Thanks for coming on. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, obviously that kind of stuff is appreciated. Fill me in, though, Phil. What? I honestly don't know, right? Because I'm under a rock in the ivory tower sometimes. What is Jim? Does Jim own a facility like you do? What's his perspective these days?
Basically, he has his home gym in his house, and like one thing we talked about in there's one of the biggest things that him and his wife did, and I did too. We have these odd parallels. Is we stripped our lives clean of anything that doesn't matter. So, like, Jim has one car for his whole family, and lives in a modest house and doesn't collect things. So he has his home gym, and then he goes to the football. He goes to the high school to help the kids. So basically, he goes and strength coaches at the high school.
Oh, I see.
So,
well, in addition to his writing, and I mean, is he still cranking out books? I mean,
still writing and has a full music set up in his basement. So still writing songs, still playing songs.
Cool.
So things like that, but yeah, he's we talked about both of our families' dreams is once the kids are done, basically you have to keep a certain level of life when your kids are around, just because they deserve it. My kids would be pissed off if we just loaded up and packed up into the woods and just hid somewhere. It's not fair to them. But him and his wife and me and mine are, the ultimate goal is just to get some little place out in the sticks somewhere and just exist at some point.
Wow.
So
super minimalist. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like it. So you guys, he has how many kids now? Jim does 2?
He has 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have 2.
And then I have 2 young ones in the house. We have 5. So
wow. Yeah.
But I have a 10-year-old, and Odin, good God, he's going to be 3 this month already. So, but
cool.
Living with us. So,
well, it's fun to explore a topic. I guess we got a little heavy this time, but you know what? Things like having a mission statement for your family, people don't do that anymore. What are we about as a family, or what are we eventually going to do? It's funny what you're talking about, because Kelly and I have talked about that quite a bit. Ultimately, if I could save enough money, we're just going to go build like a little hobbit hole somewhere and just live in the sticks.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Now, I might want to have a solar panel and some Wi-Fi access or something, but more or less off the grid and enjoy simple things. Painting, drawing, music, gardening, whatever. It's something that a lot of people have lost. And I think one of the cool things now is, and you and Jim are both poised to do this. Maybe we all are in some level, and that's that you can still have a broader impact factor. If we come back to that, you can be fairly isolated, but you can still sort of teach and help, from that point of isolation if you wanted to, because of social media or writing a book, or stuff like that. I'm still waiting for
even my facility and stuff, I never see me ever giving it up. I'll be like the 80-year-old dude in there that's walking around with a walker and helping people.
I love it.
But my where I live will be, I can detach and get away,
Right. Yeah. I think you should write your book. Fully illustrate it. You got to put your art skills to work there. Some cool, because that's something that I don't think many other writers could do. Like you write and have the masters in art. Like, you could do stuff that other people couldn't. I'd love to see a book like that instead of just slapping you on the cover of mine with the big deadlift.
That was my 10 minutes of fame, or 10 seconds of fame right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
And and that book is so specific to a very small niche that, they're like, well, like my royalty checks on that book are so tiny. I talk about it mid-show because other than lifters who are interested in eating lots of protein, I mean, it's not one of those freshman 101 kind of textbooks. It's not a lay book. Like, it doesn't have a lot of broad appeal, like a purposeful primitive. It's very sciencey. It's very narrow. I don't know. It'd be fun, though, for you to do something like more of a, life lessons, from the roving lifter kind of guy, coach, So, all right, cool stuff.
Yep. Everybody have a good Father's Day.
Very much.
And go from there.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.